Hi guys. So today for today's lesson we're dealing with reciprocal functions. So let's start. First up, what does this word reciprocal mean? Well, it's the flipped version of a fraction. So for example, if we are dealing with some random number x, remember that x is the same as x over 1. So therefore the reciprocal will be the flipped version of this, which is going to be 1 over x. So that's what the word reciprocal means. But if I'm talking about a reciprocal function, it's where you have an equation of the form y equals, so remember y is the subject, equals k over x. So the reason they call it a reciprocal function is because of this idea of x being on the denominator, as we see here. Okay, so this k up the top can literally be any sort of random number. So for example, y equals 3 over x, that's a reciprocal function. The main thing that gives it away to me when I see this is this x on the denominator. So when we have our x on the denominator, I think straight away, oh, that's a reciprocal function. Note that an example like this, y equals 3 over x, is equivalent. So that means they look different, but it's the same sort of thing. It's equivalent to y times x equals 3. And the idea is, if I multiply both sides by x, the x here cancels, and it becomes x times y equals 3. So it's just something to keep note of for when we're graphing some of these. Okay, next up, a hyperbola. That is the name for the curve when a reciprocal function is graphed. So when we graph these reciprocal functions, it makes a graph with two branches, and the branches are like these two parts. So each graph has like two kind of sections. So for example, here's a reciprocal function, here's a reciprocal function. This one is a positive hyperbola. The reason is because this 4 up the top is positive. And this one over here is a negative hyperbola because of this negative symbol out the front, or that's like considered like a -6. What I want you to notice, I haven't told you yet how to figure out these specific points that they go through, but we'll go through that right now. But all I want you to see is that positive hyperbolas, you've got the branches over here and here, whereas with the negative, the branches are here and here. Really important to remember where those branches go. Okay, so some rules to remember. So when we're graphing these, it's handy to be changing your equation to something of this form. It just makes it a little bit easier to do your table of values. So for example, let's have a look at this reciprocal function. So graph this. What we do is we take this and we times both sides by our x, and that gets us xy equals 8. So literally this number here just goes right there. So this suggests that the x times the y equals the 8. So in other words, these two numbers here, x and y, should literally always multiply to give 8. So if I'm dealing with -4, so notice my x is just going up by 1 each time. But if I've got -4, I've got to think, what times is by -4 to give -2? To give 8, and the answer is -2. These times to give 8. When you've got like a 3 doesn't fit nicely into 8, so you have to think of the fraction that works. Another way to do it is to literally change this x to your -3, and that literally becomes 8 over -3, which is going to be right here. Here, these two multiply to give 8, so that works. These two multiply to give 8. Remember, two negatives times to give positive. Now, 0, it doesn't work. You got to think to yourself, what two numbers, where, like, if x is 0, so if that's a 0 there, anything times 0 equals 0, not 8. So literally there's nothing that works for y here. Another way to think about it, if we change our x here to a 0, when you divide by 0 in your calculator, it comes up with error. So literally nothing works here. So all I've done is put a dash. 1 times 8 is 8. 2 times 4 is 8. 3 times 8 over 3 is 8. Or in other words, putting a 3 there and getting 8 over 3. And then 4 times 2 equals your 8. Okay, so these points, obviously we want to graph these to make our our graph. So there's 9 different or 8 different points for you, because that one literally doesn't work, so we can't graph that one. And what we get is this sort of looking shape. Now I want you to think to yourself that all these points are multiplying to give 8, as you can see from your table of values. So it's important that you're understanding that I could literally just look at this this point here, and I know that it's going to be an 8 on top, because 2 times 4 gives you your 8. So when you graph them, you see these 2 branches, and and then it becomes relatively straightforward. It's important to note that these lines here, this will get closer and closer to the y-axis, and this will get closer and closer to the x-axis here. Down here, this will get closer and closer, but they will never touch. They just get closer and closer and closer. So there is no y-intercepts. I'll write that down. No y-intercepts. And there's also no x-intercepts. So hopefully this is going to help you a fair bit with these questions coming up. Good luck.